When designing my music magazine, I had to analyse real magazines to make sure my magazine reflected the ways in which a real magazine works. For example, placing my barcode at the right hand corner of the page, as this is usually where magazines place theirs. I also had to take this into account when deciding where to place my font, making sure this makes it replicate a real music magazine. I made sure my masthead was the biggest piece of text on the page, as this is the piece of text that needs to stand out the most, with the strapline above in a smaller size, making sure it still grabs the reader's attention but doesn't distract them from the title or the central image. The strapline also reflects a real magazine, as in all magazines normally place one of these at the top, advertising a free gift or something exclusive to look out for in the music industry. My information on my front cover, which I decided to include in my magazine, was placed on the right hand side of the page to make sure it wasn't all placed all over the place, keeping it looking sophisticated. I also had to think about where I placed my images. I made sure my main image of my model was placed in the middle of the magazine cover with a direct eye line, keeping the reader's attention on this, taking up near enough all the space. I then placed other images on the side, but these images were much smaller to make sure they are clear to be seen but not taking the emphasis off my main elements. I also had to think about the amounts of fonts I used so that it didn't end up looking messy. I also had to make sure that all these fonts were very similar. For example, I used quite bold square looking fonts. I also had to keep the choice of colours to a minimum so that it looked like everything fitted well together, making the theme of colours run throughout. In comparison to my school magazine, my music magazine has been kept more professional looking from the choice of fonts. The choice of fonts in my music magazine look as if they're all right for the genre, which I feel is edgy and bold, looking like the type of writing associated with music magazines today. The fonts I have used for my school magazine are hard to read and boring, making it very unattractive. Therefore, this results in them not standing out for my audience or grabbing their attention in any way. In my music magazine, I kept my fonts to a minimum, using only 3 so that it looks more practical, as well as making sure the 3 different fonts I used are very similar. However, in my school magazine, even though I have only used 3 fonts, each font is very different, making each piece of text look out of place and unattractive. Also, I included a barcode in my music magazine, as every magazine has to have one. However, my school magazine didn't, showing how non-professional it is. Therefore, this proves how when I first made my school magazine, I wasn't as experienced with the different technologies as I am now after making my music magazine.